The street lights flickered weakly above the deserted road, their yellow glow barely piercing through the thick fog that settled over the city that night. Amina tightened her worn shawl around her shoulders, trying to trap the little warmth left in her body. Her fingers, stiff from the cold, hovered over her phone screen as she checked the time again. 11:57 p.m. The last bus, the only affordable ride she relied on after her long double shifts, had roared past just 2 minutes before she reached the stop, splashing muddy rainwater against her legs as if mocking her misery. She sighed, head lowered, her breath forming small white clouds in the air. The city felt louder at night, even in its silence, a hum of distant traffic, a stray dog barking, the wind slithering between empty buildings. She rubbed her hands together and told herself she would wait 15 more minutes. If no taxi appeared, she would walk the 40 minutes home. Dangerous, yes, but she'd done it before. Her job at the small cafe paid little, barely enough for her rent and her mother's medicine. She usually picked up extra shifts at a nearby laundry service, and by the end of the day her body felt like a bundle of sore muscles held together only by stubbornness. But tonight had been worse than usual. She had spilled coffee on a customer, dealt with a broken oven, and stood for hours without a break. All she wanted now was a warm bed and silence. A sudden gust of wind made her shiver, and she pulled her shawl higher, biting her lip to stop her teeth from chattering. The fog thickened, curling around her feet like cold smoke. Then she heard it. The soft purr of an engine. A black car, sleek, polished, and much too expensive to belong on this forgotten part of the city, slowed as it approached the bus stop. The headlights cut through the fog, illuminating the raindrops on Amina's face. For a moment, she tensed, her heart thumping in her chest. No car like that stopped on this road unless the driver was lost or had a purpose. It came to a halt right in front of her. She took a step back instinctively. The back door didn't open. Instead, the driver's door clicked, and a tall figure stepped out. A man. Well-dressed. And not the kind of well-dressed she saw in cafes or offices, no. His long coat was tailored, the fabric thick and elegant. His shoes glistened even in the damp light, untouched by the grime of the city. His face was sharply structured, his hair neatly styled, and though he looked young, there was something heavy in his expression, like a man who'd lived too fast, too intensely. He stopped a few steps away from her, hands raised slightly to show he meant no harm. "Excuse me," he said, his voice deep but soft, carrying easily over the wind. "You shouldn't be out here alone this late." Amina blinked, unsure how to respond. "I'm waiting for the bus," she muttered, glancing away. His eyes flicked to the schedule board, the one she had memorized by heart. "There are no more buses tonight," he said gently. "Not for another 6 hours." She felt a strange mix of embarrassment and frustration. She knew that, but hope was a stubborn thing. "I'll be fine," she insisted, turning away. "I'll walk." "Walk," he repeated, almost incredulous. "In this weather? In the dark?" Something in his tone made her shoulders stiffen, not arrogance, not mockery, but concern. Real concern. But she didn't trust easily, especially not rich men who appeared out of nowhere. She lifted her chin. "I can handle myself." He studied her for a moment, then exhaled quietly, as if choosing his words with care. "Let me drive you home," he offered. "It's not safe for you to be out here." She shook her head immediately. "No. Thank you." "Please," he said, stepping closer but not invading her space. "I'm not trying to frighten you. I just don't want anything to happen to you." She looked at him fully for the first time. His eyes, dark, intense, and strangely tired, held sincerity. But sincerity from strangers meant nothing in this world. She had heard stories, seen too many headlines, learned too many lessons. "I don't know you," she replied quietly. He nodded slowly, accepting that truth. That's fair, he said. My name is Zayan. The name sounded expensive. Rich. Powerful. Definitely out of place on this street. Amina, she said reluctantly, because politeness was the only thing her mother had insisted on teaching her. Zayan's eyes softened at her voice. Amina, he repeated, as though testing how it felt to say it. If you're uncomfortable, you can sit in the back seat. I won't talk. I'll just take you wherever you want to go. You don't even know where I live, she said. I'll go wherever you tell me to, he replied simply. The wind howled again, slicing through her shawl. She couldn't stop herself from shivering. Zayan noticed. He took off his coat, a gesture so calm, so natural, as if he did it often, and held it out to her. No, she said instantly, backing away. I can't take that. You're freezing, he murmured. Please. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the fog swirling around them like a scene from a movie. She felt trapped between fear and exhaustion. Between pride and survival. He wasn't pushing her. He wasn't threatening her. He was simply standing there, coat in hand, waiting. And that strangely made him seem less dangerous. Finally, she hugged her shawl tightly and whispered, "Just a ride home." He nodded once, serious and respectful. Just a ride. And as she stepped toward the car, unaware of how this single choice would shift the entire course of her life, the fog parted just enough to reveal her own reflection in the glossy black door, a tired girl on the edge of a story she never saw coming. Amina hesitated before sliding into the back seat of the sleek car. The interior smelled faintly of leather and something warm, like cedarwood and spice. It was the kind of scent she associated with expensive hotels, places she'd only ever seen in advertisements on the cafe's TV. Zayan closed the door gently behind her before circling to the driver's seat. He didn't say a word as he settled in, adjusted his coatless shoulders, and turned the key. The engine hummed softly, smoother than any car she had ever been inside. For a moment, the silence felt awkward, but strangely peaceful. Amina clasped her cold hands together, trying to still the tremor in her fingers. "Where do you live?" he asked quietly, eyes fixed on the road. She told him the name of her neighborhood, a modest, crowded district far from the center. When she spoke, he nodded, but his brows lowered slightly, as if the name carried some unspoken concern. They drove through the fog-thickened streets, past shuttered shops and dimly lit apartment blocks. Rain began again, tapping gently against the windows. Amina watched the droplets race each other down the glass, trying to ignore the exhaustion creeping over her. After several minutes, Zayan's phone buzzed. He didn't check it, didn't even glance. Instead, he tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Another buzz. Then another. "You can answer," she said quietly, feeling oddly guilty for being the reason he was out so late. "I don't want to," he replied in a tone that ended the subject. The fog thickened even more as they neared the outskirts of the industrial district, an area Amina usually avoided after dark. Tonight, though, she had little choice. But when Zayan turned left instead of right, her head jerked up. "That's not the way," she said, alarm rising. Zayan slowed the car. "The main road ahead is blocked," he explained. "Flooding. I'll take an alternate route." Her heartbeat slowed a little, but unease lingered. Still, she reminded herself that if he wanted to harm her, he had already had opportunities. But when the car continued past her neighborhood entirely, she leaned forward, voice tense. "You missed." "I know," he said gently. "The police have closed off the entrances. The whole block is without power." Her stomach dropped. She'd seen her area flood before. She'd also seen how dangerous it became. "Still, I can walk." "No," he answered firmly. "It isn't safe." She bristled. "You don't even know my area." "I know enough," he murmured. And something in his voice told her he knew more than she guessed. After several more minutes of quiet driving, the rain turned heavier. Sheets of water blurred the windshield. The wipers struggled to keep up. "We'll wait the storm out," he said, finally pulling into a long, tree-lined driveway she didn't recognize. The iron gates opened automatically as they approached. Amina stared, wide-eyed, as the car rolled through. Beyond the gates stretched a property so large it felt unreal, a sweeping driveway curving through manicured gardens, shadowed statues half visible in the darkness, and at the center of it all, a massive two-story mansion with warm lights glowing behind the rain-speckled windows. Her breath hitched. This is where you live?" "Yes," he said simply, as if discussing the weather. "I can't stay here," she said instantly. "Just drop me somewhere nearby, I'll—" "Amina," he interrupted gently. "It's dangerous outside. The rain isn't stopping anytime soon. Just wait inside until it clears." "No," she whispered, staring at the mansion that looked like it belonged in a magazine. "I don't belong in a place like this." He parked the car but didn't turn toward her. "Safety isn't about belonging," he murmured. "It's about being human." Slowly, he stepped out and opened her door, shielding her from the rain with his coat as they hurried inside. The hallway took her breath away. Warm lighting. Polished wooden floors. Elegant paintings. Fresh flowers in tall vases. But it didn't feel cold or stiff, it felt lived in, though sorrow clung to the air like a forgotten perfume. Zayan gestured toward a cozy sitting room with a fireplace. "You can rest here. I'll make some tea." "You don't have to," she said, still awkward, unsure where to place her hands. "I want to," he replied, disappearing toward the kitchen. As she stepped closer to the fireplace, she noticed frames on a nearby shelf, mostly of a little girl with curly hair and bright eyes. One picture showed her clutching a woman's hand, a beautiful woman whose smile was warm enough to light the room. Amina frowned softly. Where was the girl now? Where was the woman? Zayan returned minutes later, holding a tray with 2 steaming cups. "Peppermint," he said. "It helps with exhaustion." She wrapped her hands around the warm mug and took a sip. "Thank you." He stood a moment longer, as if wanting to say something more, but then he simply nodded and sat across the room. Amina felt the warmth seep into her bones. The exhaustion she had been fighting all day began to pull her downwards. "You live alone?" she asked quietly. His jaw tightened. "No," he said after a pause. "My daughter lives here." Amina's eyes widened. "Your daughter?" "She's asleep," he said, voice softer now. "I try not to disturb her at night." "Where's her mother?" Amina asked before she could stop herself. Zayan's gaze dropped to his cup. A heavy silence followed. "Gone," he finally whispered. The fireplace crackled softly. Amina felt guilt flood her. She hadn't meant to touch a wound. "I'm sorry," she murmured. Zayan nodded, but his eyes were distant, haunted. Outside, thunder rumbled. Inside, quiet stretched between them like a fragile thread. And Amina had no idea that the girl in the photographs had already heard her voice and would soon step into the room, changing the course of all 3 of their lives. The storm outside had quieted to a steady drizzle by the time Amina finished her tea. Warmth seeped through her body at last, loosening the tight knot between her shoulders. She set the empty cup on the small table beside her, convinced she should stand, thank Zayan, and insist on leaving. But before she could move, a soft sound broke the silence. Not thunder. Not the wind. A small voice. Amina turned toward the hallway just as a little girl peeked from behind the staircase. She was tiny, maybe 6 or 7, with dark curls spilling over her pajamas and a stuffed rabbit clutched tightly in her arms. Her eyes, large, deep, almost too expressive, were fixed on Amina with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Zayan was on his feet instantly. Hiba, he said softly, his voice transforming into something gentle, almost fragile. You're awake. The girl didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer, her gaze never leaving Amina. She looked as though she were studying a puzzle or maybe a wish she wasn't sure she was allowed to make. Amina smiled awkwardly. Hello. Hiba blinked slowly, then whispered, Are you cold? The question startled Amina. Children usually ask things like what's your name? Or why are you here? But this little girl had noticed her shivering first. She was observant, sensitive. A little, Amina admitted gently. But I'm okay now. Hiba took another step, her rabbit dangling at her side. Daddy doesn't bring people home. Amina's heart thudded unexpectedly. Zayan looked away, jaw tight. That's true, he murmured. The girl continued to approach, her bare feet making soft taps on the floor. She stopped right in front of Amina, looking up with those wide, searching eyes. Are you going to stay? She asked. Amina froze. Zayan inhaled sharply. Hiba. I just asked, the girl said, frowning at her father's interruption. Amina lowered herself to a knee so she wouldn't tower over the child. Sweetheart. I was only here because of the storm. Hiba's small shoulders sagged, disappointment clouding her expression. She clutched her stuffed rabbit tighter, as though bracing herself against a familiar sadness. A silence heavier than the rain settled over the room. Then, without warning, the little girl stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Amina's neck. The embrace stunned her. Warm. Soft. Trusting. She blinked, unsure what to do, until instinct guided her to gently hold the child in return. Hiba, Zayan breathed, taking a step toward them, you shouldn't. But the girl buried her face in Amina's shoulder. I like her, she whispered, voice trembling. She feels safe. Amina's heart twisted. She could feel the small shivers running through the child's body. This wasn't just affection, it was loneliness, raw and unfiltered. Zayan ran a hand through his hair, helpless. She hasn't connected with anyone like this in a long time. Amina looked from the girl to Zayan. Why? He hesitated. The firelight cast shadows across his face, revealing something vulnerable beneath the composed exterior. After her mother passed, he said quietly, Hiba stopped speaking to most people. Therapists, teachers, family, she withdrew. She barely lets anyone touch her. Amina felt a soft gasp escape her. She looked again at the girl now wrapped around her. Something inside her, something she didn't fully understand, ached. I'm sorry, she whispered to the child. Hiba didn't let go. After a long moment, Amina gently loosened the girl's grip so she could see her face. Why did you come downstairs? Hiba's voice cracked, barely audible. I had a nightmare. Instantly, Amina felt her heart melt. She lifted a hand and brushed the curls from the girl's cheek. It's okay. I'm here. Something changed in Zayan's eyes, then a flicker of hope mixed with fear, as if he'd stumbled upon something precious yet fragile enough to break with a breath. Hiba tugged gently at Amina's sleeve. Stay until I sleep. Amina looked at Zayan, unsure. He swallowed. If you don't mind, he said, voice trembling just slightly, she hasn't asked that of anyone since. He didn't finish the sentence. Amina nodded, her voice soft. Of course. They moved to the girl's room, a softly lit space with pastel walls and shelves lined with stuffed animals. Amina sat on the edge of the small bed, humming quietly while Hiba curled beside her, eyes fluttering with exhaustion. Within minutes, the little girl fell asleep, her hand still loosely holding Amina's. Amina gently set the hand down and stood. When she stepped out of the room, she found Zayan waiting in the hallway, leaning against the doorframe. His expression was unreadable, a mixture of gratitude, confusion, and something deeper. I don't know how you did that, he whispered. No one has gotten close to her like that since, his voice broke. Since her mother. Amina shook her head. I didn't do anything. You did, he insisted, stepping closer. You reached her. She looked down, uncomfortable. She just needed comfort. Any woman would have done the same. No, he said firmly. Not any woman. Their eyes met. The moment felt heavy, important. Zayan exhaled shakily. Amina. I know I have no right to ask you anything. But I need help. My daughter needs help. Amina tensed. What do you mean? He took a breath. Then another. I want you to stay, he said quietly. Not just tonight. I want you to help take care of Hiba. Her eyes widened in shock. I can pay you, he added quickly. More than you earn now. You'd have your own room, your own space. You'd never want for anything. Zayan, she whispered, overwhelmed. You barely know me. I know enough, he said softly. You walked home in the cold after 2 jobs. You helped an old woman across a street earlier today when no one else stopped. And my daughter smiled tonight for the first time in months. He stepped back, giving her space. Please. I won't force you. But I'm asking, begging as a father. Amina's heartbeat echoed in her ears. Her mind was a storm. Her heart was something else entirely. And she had no idea that his request wasn't a coincidence. Because Zayan knew more about her than he had admitted. Amina's mind whirled as she walked back to the sitting room, the weight of Zayan's words pressing against her chest. Stay. Take care of his daughter? She had expected a strange, unsettling night at a mansion, but not this, not an invitation that felt like an unspoken responsibility. Her pulse raced. She wanted to say no, she should say no. And yet, a strange tug pulled at her heart. Hiba's trusting eyes, the way she had clung to her without hesitation, haunted her. Zayan sat silently on the couch, his fingers tapping the armrest. When she entered, he didn't look at her immediately, his gaze focused on some distant point, lost in thought. He had a strange vulnerability about him now, a quiet desperation that made her pause. I need to think, she said, her voice small. He nodded. I understand. The silence stretched, broken only by the faint tick of a clock and the occasional drip of rain from the roof. Then Zayan's voice broke through again, softer this time, almost hesitant. I should tell you something, he said carefully. Something I didn't mention earlier. Amina stiffened, her heart tightening. What is it? He took a slow breath. I didn't meet you by accident. The words hit her like ice. She blinked, trying to mask her shock. What do you mean? I saw you earlier today, he said, running a hand through his hair. Helping an old woman across the street. You didn't think anyone noticed. But I did. Her hands clenched. You followed me. I did, he admitted, his voice low but steady. Not because I wanted to scare you. Not because I wanted to anything negative. I watched from a distance. I saw the way you cared, the way you treated people, even when you had nothing yourself. I wanted someone like that for Hiba. Amina's stomach dropped. The room suddenly felt colder, though the fireplace burned steadily. She had trusted him, relied on him even for one night, and he had been watching her. Observing her. Why didn't you tell me, she asked, her voice trembling. Why would you hide that? Because, he said slowly, I knew you might not come if you knew the truth. And Hiba. Hiba needed someone she could trust, someone who would be gentle without expecting anything in return. Amina looked away, her hands shaking. Her heart told her he was sincere, that this was true. But her mind screamed betrayal. You tricked me. I didn't trick you, he said quickly, leaning forward, eyes pleading. I gave you a choice. I asked you to stay, and you're free to leave. But please, consider why you stayed with her tonight. Not for me. For her. The words hung in the air. Amina's mind raced, recalling Hiba's small hands gripping hers, the warmth of the child's tiny embrace. She had felt a connection pure and innocent. And it wasn't a choice she had made lightly. She started, but her voice faltered. Zayan didn't push. He simply waited, the weight of his gaze both heavy and gentle. Hours passed in silence. The storm outside had passed completely, leaving only the quiet rhythm of dripping water. Amina moved to the window, staring out at the mansion grounds bathed in moonlight. She tried to separate her feelings, the confusion, the resentment, the inexplicable pull toward them both. And then, the quiet knock on the door made her turn. Hiba appeared, still in her pajamas, her small eyes wide and searching. Don't leave, she whispered, clutching the stuffed rabbit she had dropped earlier. Please. Daddy cries when he thinks I'm alone. Amina's heart shattered. She sank to her knees, the conflict inside her dissolving in the face of such raw vulnerability. She gathered Hiba into her arms once more, holding her tightly as the girl buried her face against her shoulder. Zayan stepped back, his face unreadable. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. That night, Amina realized something: she couldn't simply walk away. Not from Hiba. Not from the family she had stumbled into. And perhaps, not from Zayan either, though the thought made her heart ache with uncertainty. But the next morning would bring new challenges. Questions of trust, of boundaries, of love, and of the life she might have to leave behind. As she lay awake that night, Hiba's small hand occasionally brushing hers, Amina wondered if she had stepped into a story she wasn't ready for, a story of heartbreak, hope, and secrets that could either bind them together or tear them apart forever. And she didn't yet know that Zayan's intentions ran even deeper than he had revealed. Morning sunlight spilled into the mansion through tall windows, painting the polished floors with golden streaks. The storm had cleared, leaving behind a world washed clean, though for Amina, the night's revelations weighed heavily. She sat at the edge of the bed in her small guest room, fingers intertwined, staring at the floor as if answers might appear there. Hiba was still asleep, curled beneath the blankets, her little hand resting on the stuffed rabbit Amina had tucked beside her. Seeing the child so peaceful stirred a warmth in Amina's chest, one she hadn't expected to feel. She had come to care for this child in just a single night, and now, leaving was impossible. The door opened quietly, and Zayan stepped inside. He looked as if he hadn't slept. His dark eyes were intense, searching, almost afraid. "Good morning," he said softly. Amina looked up, hesitant. "Morning. I wanted to apologize," he said, closing the distance between them. "For yesterday. For not telling you the truth from the start." She shook her head. You meant well. I can see that. But knowing you followed me," her voice faltered. "It scares me. And it makes me wonder what else I don't know about you." Zayan's lips tightened. "I know. I don't blame you. I've made mistakes. But I promise you nothing I did was meant to harm you. I only wanted to find someone kind, someone genuine, who could help Hiba feel safe again." Amina's heart softened. She remembered the little girl's face last night, the quiet trust she had placed in her. And the truth was, she wanted to help Hiba. More than that, she wanted to belong, even if only a little. Before she could speak, Hiba shuffled into the room, rubbing her eyes. She stopped at the doorway, staring at Amina. "Are you leaving?" Amina's throat tightened. She shook her head. "No, sweetheart. I'm staying." Hiba's face lit up. She ran into Amina's arms, burying her face in the woman's shoulder. Amina hugged her tightly, feeling the weight of responsibility and love settle around her like a warm blanket. Zayan watched silently, his expression unreadable at first. Then, slowly, he stepped forward, kneeling so he could meet Amina's eyes. "I don't expect you to forgive me for everything," he said, voice soft. "I just hope you can choose us. Not because of me, not because of anything else, but because it's right." Amina studied him, the lines of grief and vulnerability etched into his face, the truth in his eyes. For a moment, she saw not the wealthy, distant man she had feared, but someone human, someone fragile, someone desperate for connection. She began, searching for the right words. But the words failed her. She only nodded. Zayan's hand reached for hers slowly, hesitantly. Amina didn't pull away. Instead, she let him take her hand, feeling the warmth of his palm, the steady beat of his heart. Hiba tugged at her other hand. "Both of you?" she asked, a hopeful smile forming on her small lips. "Yes, both of us," Amina whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. The day passed in quiet, tender moments, laughter over breakfast, soft conversation by the fireplace, and Hiba showing Amina her favorite books and toys. Every glance between Amina and Zayan carried a silent understanding, a fragile promise that this connection was new, delicate, but real. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Zayan led Amina and Hiba to the garden. Lanterns glowed softly along the pathway, and the air smelled of wet earth and blooming flowers. Hiba ran ahead, laughing, her joy echoing across the lawn. Zayan turned to Amina. "I know this hasn't been easy for you," he said. "I know you have a life outside this house. And I won't ask you to give up everything. But, if you choose to stay, you choose us, Hiba and me, fully. No reservations. No doubts." Amina looked at him, at the child running into the fading sunlight, at the warmth in the house behind her, and at the unspoken trust between them. She realized then that life rarely gave second chances. That sometimes, you had to take a leap, even if your heart was unsure. "I choose family," she said finally, her voice steady, though her chest swelled with emotion. Zayan exhaled, a mixture of relief and gratitude washing over him. He stepped closer, pulling her into a gentle embrace. Amina felt her arms wrap around him instinctively, a perfect fit she hadn't expected to find. Hiba joined them, tugging at their hands. Together, the three of them stood in the garden, the last light of sunset washing over their faces. For the first time in months, for the first time in years, Zayan felt hope. Not just for himself, but for the family he had almost lost before he had even found it. Amina glanced down at Hiba, whose small hand gripped hers tightly. She smiled softly, her heart full. She had stepped into a world she hadn't known existed, a world of warmth, trust, and unexpected love. And for the first time in a long time, she felt at home. As night fell, the mansion glowed behind them, a beacon of new beginnings. Outside, the stars twinkled, silent witnesses to the start of a story that would change all their lives forever. And in that quiet, perfect moment, Amina, Zayan, and Hiba knew no matter what secrets remained, no matter the hardships that might come, they had chosen each other. They had chosen family.